Prince Harry wants that Freedom Flight video deleted from the internet, Lady Colin Campbell. He says we should never see it again. We should just pretend that he never made all of these ludicrous claims. You know what? Why don't we just play it once more then, Lady C, to really annoy him? Watch.
I am on the 14th of March, and we are on the Freedom Flight. We are leaving Canada, and we are headed to Los Angeles. Grandma's here. Hi, Grandma. Bruce here, with a ball in her mouth.
Why don't you say hi?
So busy with the current situation, thanks to another amazing friend who we've never met, but who believes in us.
The Freedom Flight video is a clear record from the period after Megxit that Harry now seems to want erased from the internet. The clip shows him on March 14, 2020, boarding a plane from Canada to Los Angeles and calling it a freedom flight. His tone sounds like someone who feels he is escaping something. He says they are leaving Canada and heading to Los Angeles with their dog beside them. The phrase freedom flight reflects a person who sees the move as a release, a moment of breaking free. The issue with trying to remove this video is simple. The moment has already been recorded. That label, freedom flight, shows how Harry truly felt at the time. He described it as leaving a kind of confinement, as if he was stepping out of a restrictive system. Later in Kiev, he said, "I will always be part of the royal family. I'm doing what I was born to do." That sounds like an attempt to reshape how that earlier moment is remembered.
Well, it was a bold statement of the fact that he had been imprisoned, that he had been born into a prison, that he had been brought up in a prison, and that under Meghan's ministrations and her enlightenment, he had managed to escape from the prison.
The Freedom Flight video is the piece of evidence that makes this change in story visible. Lady Colin Campbell highlights this contradiction clearly. She says the Freedom Flight showed Harry presenting himself as someone escaping a life he viewed as a prison. Now, she argues, he wants to use that same background to support a different claim. That claim is his statement that he will always remain part of the royal family. Both versions exist side by side, and that is the problem. Harry may want one version to disappear because together they do not fully align, and that weakens his current message. Campbell also explains what a working royal actually means. A working royal serves the monarchy and the country, not personal gain. Their duties, titles, and roles are tied to public service. Harry, however, has earned money from appearances, clothing mentions, and speaking engagements like the Kyiv Forum. That reflects a personal business model, not a traditional royal role. At the same time, a People magazine cover appeared during a state visit week, replacing what might have been coverage of that visit. Campbell and others see this as a strategic media move designed to shift attention.
Harry is, of that definition, not a working royal because he is expecting a recompense into his personal bank account. So you can't, for instance, say that you are being unselfish, but you demand all of the rewards of unselfishness for yourself. That is selfishness.
The state visit was receiving steady and positive media attention for King Charles, which also created an indirect comparison with Harry and Meghan. Then came the People magazine cover featuring them, arriving at the same time. It looked like a planned move to insert their story into the same news cycle and take attention away from the visit. People magazine has often been seen as a supportive outlet for their narrative, but some observers now say its influence is fading. Reports from readers in the United States suggest fewer copies are being bought, especially when it skips major stories like the state visit. This could mean the audience that once followed the Sussex story closely is losing interest. As the story becomes repetitive, that early curiosity has faded. Meanwhile, the anniversary photo of William and Catherine also sparked debate. Claudia Connell from the Daily Mail criticized it for looking too polished and slightly staged. Lady Colin Campbell and Dan Wooten partly agreed, but also felt the criticism went too far. Campbell suggested it might have felt more natural if Catherine had taken the photo herself. There is a slight mismatch between the casual setting and the professional finish, but calling it similar to Meghan's style does not fully hold. Meghan's photos of her children rarely show them clearly.
All that we have seen this week in terms of the in-depth reporting, which was put out in People magazine, quite disgracefully actually, designed by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's team to push King Charles's state visit from the cover, which it successfully managed to do. But I would just argue that harms People magazine, and I've been hearing from lots of outspoken viewers in the States, Lady C, who see I've gone into their supermarkets this week and there are so many copies of People magazine. They say anecdotally far fewer people are buying People this week because it's got Harry and Meghan on the cover.
Instead, Meghan's images often focus on small details like feet, backs of heads, or carefully framed angles that suggest presence without showing full faces. Catherine's anniversary photo is very different. It clearly shows her children, including George, who is not perfectly posed and even looks slightly away from the camera. That natural detail was not edited out. The approach is opposite to Meghan's carefully managed image style. Catherine allows real, imperfect moments to be seen, while Meghan's approach removes imperfections. So the comparison is not between two similar styles, but between openness and control. Another major development this week involves Diana's recordings. Around 5 hours of tapes from 1991, most of which have never been heard publicly, will be released in a 3-part series for the 30th anniversary of her death in 2027. These recordings were made through James Colthurst, who helped Andrew Morton write Diana, her true story. The producers say the tapes will show Diana as strong, insightful, and relatable, offering a new perspective that may challenge how people have understood her story.
Course of this state visit, the Daily Mail has continued what I believe is a campaign against Prince William and Catherine. They decided to use the 15th anniversary wedding picture in order to do it. So this was a picture, I mean, I've got no idea what you think about it, Lady C, and maybe for you this pushed the boundaries, I don't know. But as the Royal News Network posted, Catherine almost can't do right for doing wrong, because they said Catherine edits a family picture poorly, the media says don't do that, and so she stops.
Lady Colin Campbell's view of these recordings carries weight because she knew Diana personally. She believes the tapes will show Diana as more strategic and strong-minded than the victim image presented in Morton's book. According to Campbell, Diana did not fundamentally oppose Charles being with Camilla. Instead, she wanted her own independence and the chance to shape her own life. Campbell describes Diana as both charming and emotionally open, but also tough and capable of using situations to her advantage. This challenges the simpler narrative of her as only a victim. She suggests Diana may have used Morton's book as part of a plan to exit her marriage. If the recordings confirm this, they could change how people interpret her story. This matters because Harry often refers to Diana's experience to explain his own choices. If the tapes show Diana as more in control of her situation, it could weaken that comparison. Campbell also notes that Diana could present herself in a softer way than she really was when it suited her. The full recordings may reveal a more complete and complex version of her personality.
Catherine is the one who has been an amateur photographer, and I hope she continues to be an amateur photographer, because I actually agree to an extent that it was very nicely posed, and had it not been done by a professional, I think it would have had greater appeal. But because it was done by a professional, and it was done very sort of roots.
The Freedom Flight video and Diana's recordings together form two key parts of the historical record. One is a moment Harry now seems uncomfortable with, while the other may reshape the story he often refers to. Both remain part of the record and cannot be changed. Harry once described his departure as escaping a restrictive life, yet now says he is still fulfilling his original role. Those two ideas exist together and raise questions. The Freedom Flight video is unlikely to disappear, and Diana's recordings are set to be released in 2027. Over time, these details build a fuller picture that does not always match current narratives. The release date of August 31st, 2027, exactly 30 years after Diana's death, has also drawn criticism, with some calling it a calculated and commercial decision.
The other thing I just want to say, can we just take a look at the portrait of William and Catherine and the children? Because the other thing I disagree with Claudia Connell about, Lady C, is that this wasn't a perfect picture. Okay, George is not looking at the camera. He actually looks a little bit uncomfortable, but they still included it because it was captured in a moment of time. In terms of using the technology too, like I would argue, Lady C, if drones had been around in, what was it, the 1930s, then the Queen Mother would have probably used drones. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Diana died in the early hours of August 31st, 1997, and that date is always heavily covered by the media. Releasing a documentary on that same day ensures maximum attention. The strategy is clear. The anniversary brings global focus, which increases viewership. Producers have also claimed the recordings show how accurately Diana predicted future events. Since the tapes were made years before her death and before major public interviews, any predictions she made could be significant. If she spoke about the royal family, Charles, Camilla, or her own future in ways that later proved true, it would highlight her awareness of her situation. Campbell's claim that Diana accepted Charles and Camilla's relationship and may have exaggerated her feelings for strategic reasons could either be confirmed or challenged by these tapes. If true, it would present Diana as someone carefully shaping her story rather than simply reacting to events. The recordings would then show a woman actively managing her image and decisions.
The producers have released a statement, Lady C, saying, in life, when Diana spoke, the world listened. These newly uncovered recordings offer a rare opportunity to hear Diana's perspective once more. It's time to recognize her legacy as one of agency, courage, and love. The raw words of Diana present a fuller portrait, a woman navigating pressure, redefining her role, and moving forward with conviction.
This connects directly to Harry's narrative today. He often presents his actions as following in Diana's footsteps, leaving to protect himself and his family. But if Diana's own words show a different reality, that comparison becomes less clear. The Morton book was designed to gain public sympathy at a specific time, serving a purpose. The recordings, however, are unfiltered conversations with a trusted friend. If they differ from the book, they may challenge long-held beliefs. In that case, Harry's story would rest on a version of events that is not entirely accurate. The Freedom Flight video and Diana's recordings sit at opposite ends of the same story. One shows Harry claiming freedom. The other may show Diana acting with intention and control rather than escape.
Diana made those tapes because she would not deal directly with Andrew Morton. So she did them through James Colthurst, whose family owned the Blarney Stone in Ireland, incidentally, for what that's worth. Because remember, Diana's part Irish, and they were good friends. And so the tape, but Diana also was very selective with her presentation of facts.
If these 2 points do not support the story Harry has built between them, the overall narrative becomes harder to maintain. The Freedom Flight may not reflect Diana's experience in the way he suggests. And if Diana was not simply a victim, then the comparison changes completely. When the recordings are released, they will exist alongside Harry's past statements for anyone to examine. Lady Colin Campbell's insights carry weight because of her long connection to the royal world and her balanced view of Diana. She has acknowledged both strengths and flaws, which adds credibility to her expectations. She believes the tapes will show Diana as resilient and strategic rather than purely victimized. The Freedom Flight video will remain available, and the recordings will add more detail to the story. Together, they will allow a clearer comparison between what is claimed and what actually happened.
Not going anywhere.
Diana was never the victim that she presented herself as being. That was a totally opportunistic move, so that when she left, because she wanted to leave Charles, she wanted to leave the royal way of life, she wanted to remarry and have a daughter. Those were her ambitions. And she knew that she was expected to stay in the marriage for the rest of her life. And she was trying to use my book, then she used the Morton book as a way out of the marriage. And indeed, it worked.
The role of media outlets like the Daily Mail also shapes how these stories are presented. Some critics say the paper often finds ways to criticize William and Catherine, even during positive moments. The Cornwall anniversary photo criticism is one example of this pattern. There are also claims that certain figures within palace circles support a softer approach toward Harry and Meghan, which may influence coverage. While this is not confirmed, the timing of certain articles suggests editorial choices that create contrast within the same news cycle. Publishing criticism of William and Catherine during a successful state visit shifts focus away from positive institutional stories. These choices do not need direct coordination to benefit another narrative. Their timing alone can have that effect. The Freedom Flight video, Diana's recordings, media coverage, and magazine features all exist together in the same timeline. Each is the result of a decision, and together they form a detailed record. That record continues to grow, offering a clearer picture of how events unfolded and how different narratives were shaped.
And she intended to leave Charles, she intended to be her own woman, and also, very importantly, she had no problem with Charles ending up with Camilla. She simply wanted to end up with her version of the equivalent of Camilla. But she had nothing against Charles ending up with Camilla. This supposed great hatred of Camilla has been, and that she was a great victim of Camilla is an invention that even Diana at times used to admit was an invention.
The way different media outlets handle these stories shows how narratives are shaped over time. Some platforms highlight certain angles while ignoring others, depending on their audience and editorial direction. This creates a situation where the same event can be presented in completely different ways. In the case of Harry and the royal family, every detail, whether it is an old video, a new interview, or an upcoming documentary, becomes part of a larger story that keeps evolving. The Freedom Flight video, the discussion around Diana's recordings, and the media coverage all connect to form a timeline that people can interpret in their own way. No single outlet controls the full picture, but together they influence how the public understands it. As more information comes out, the contrast between past statements and present claims becomes easier to see. The record does not disappear, it grows, and with time it becomes clearer which parts were consistent and which ones changed.